if I look back now on what I love about what I do now, what drives me is having an impact. As I've got older, and I didn't realise it at the time, I don't mind failing. I will always regret not putting myself in a position where I can have an impact. And I think in a big company like Accenture or a bank, or when you're consulting, you're either just a name or a cog in the wheel, or you're in and then you're out and you're not actually driving things. My ambition in life is to reach my potential. But if you reach your potential, I think you can say that you've given life a shot. And I think for me, being a CEO enables you to reach that potential more effectively.
In today's episode, we speak to Jeff Parker. He's the CEO of Paymentology, but we go through his whole career journey, from doing 5 individual paper rounds to being involved in selling world first to the Ant Group, Alibaba's financial payments arm.
Did you ever think, like, I know what my life's going to be in those, like, mid-20 stages?
I think if I'm brutally honest with myself, when I was...
I'm actually excited to do this.
It's actually funny, yeah?
Because, A, it's an exciting thing to do, and it's more exciting than our day jobs. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
B, you've got an amazing reputation, and I like you as a person, but I don't actually know that much about how you came to end up.
Well, let's
here.
see. Let's see if we find out.
Let's open it out. And C, a big thing is that I want people to see people like yours' journey.
Yeah.
Like, I want people early in their career to go, oh, okay, that guy's the CEO of Paymentology. How did he get there? Well, what did he want to do when he was younger? How did that all open up? So for me, I'm just excited to learn for my own interest and to share it.
And we didn't do the normal private school, follow the norm. That's good.
So let's go school.
Okay.
So where was school? What was school? How much did you enjoy school? They're my 3.
So school, local comprehensive up in Lincolnshire. Did I like school? Yeah, I kind of like school, but I was probably the most academic of most of my friends. But most of my school career was all around sport, like football, rugby, athletics. Yeah. Didn't really talk too much about careers or anything like that.
So did you think you wanted to be one of those things? Did you think you wanted to be an athlete in one of those?
100%. So I got football was my main sport, but realistically wasn't good enough. Did all the normal trials with teams and stuff, but never really made it. But athletics was really where I thought I was going to do, and I got a scholarship to a school called Millfield, which is a sports school. I got a 75% scholarship, and we couldn't afford it. So my family chipped around. So I had my aunties, uncles, grandparents all chipping money in to afford the scholarship so I could go. And when we raised the money, and then I went to see the school, and they told me that it's all very well affording it, but just to let you know, you need more money than the tuition, because most of the pupils go to skiing or they go like luxurious holidays, and we couldn't afford it, so I turned it down. So I didn't go.
How old were you when that happened?
14, and that's probably my regret's the wrong word. That's probably the one thing that I often look back and say, would my life have been differently if I'd have gone there and had all the training and the coaching?
I got a scholarship to Colston's when I was 13.
Oh, okay.
Which is a big competing school.
Yeah.
And my mum could not afford it.
Yeah.
And we had that inflection point, exactly the same thing. And we basically said, go, but do no school trips.
And did you go?
Which is what I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you find that?
Really hard. Yeah. Because I got bullied for being the poor kid.
Yeah.
Literally, these kids. I went there and it looked like Hogwarts. Do you remember when you went to look around?
Yeah,
Millfield?
I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So that happens. Did that like change your perspective on what you wanted from school? Did you go back to school and be like, oh, actually, I've got a different mindset about success and what all that looks like now?
I don't think that particular moment, did. I think it reinforced the value of my friends and friendships. So my best friends are still the friends I went to school with. One's an electrician, one's a postman. And I think having to consciously make that decision to whether you stay in that environment or you go somewhere else, like cemented what was important, I think, to me, which is probably, I don't think you realise at the time, but probably cement some of your core values and things as you grow older. But there was definitely a time, when we can come to later, at university, where I realised the value of money and what financial opportunities are out there that I just never realised existed.
That broadened horizons.
Yeah.
So you gave up on the sporting dream at what point? Because I remember the moment it happened for me. When did it happen for you?
When did I give up on the sporting dream? I think...
As a career?
Yeah. I don't ever think... I'm not sure I ever thought... I think not going to Millfield was probably the time when I realised that I wasn't going to get the right level of education and support or training and coaching that would make me get there. But I don't think it was till I was probably 16, 17 when I realised football was never going to be it, and I was never really good enough, I don't think, in reality.
So what replaced it? Because you're an ambitious person, right? What replaced it?
I think travel. So I took a year out after my A-levels and basically played golf and sold suits at a suit shop called Burton's.
Amazing.
For about a year. And then I went traveling. I did about 8 months traveling around the US, Mexico, Central America. And then I started to go to, I don't know if you've heard of something called Camp America. Mm-hmm. So I used to go every summer and work in the kitchen washing dishes in a summer camp in the US. And then I used that to basically get me into the North America and go traveling every year. So I did that every summer.
Can you just apply for Camp America? Anybody can just log on.
There's like a big fair in London that they hold every year that holds like 100 of these summer camps, and school kids just rock up and interview.
So you just heard about it, got on the National Express and did it.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Amazing. So the Burton selling suits thing's an interesting one. I want to dig into that just quickly. Did they teach you how to sell, or did they just say get yourself in there and sell some suits?
Yeah, no, they teach you how to sell. I mean, it's a different type of sell, but it's all that psychological thing around what drives people.
Yeah.
How do you understand what it is that why they're buying a suit? Is it for their own personal self-wealth? Is it for an event they're going to? Is it other things? And I think that was probably the start of understanding how you can use, let's call it, a person's psychology to influence their behaviours.
Do you ever think about that job when you're doing stuff now? Because personally, if I think back to my cold calling days, sometimes when I'm in a really big meeting, I'm like, this is no different to ringing someone up that's on my sales list for the day and asking them questions. Do you ever look back and think, that skill's now being used just in a completely different scenario? I
100% look back and think that the job I'm doing now is a lot easier than the job that I was doing then. I think about what I did, I did 5 paper rounds, I think, consecutively when I was a kid to earn money. I was doing a morning paper round, an afternoon paper round, a Thursday paper round, a Friday paper round, a Saturday afternoon paper round. I did car washing, washed dishes. At university, I used to put on a blue cap and an apron and wash dishes in front of my university colleagues at my halls of residence where I lived. So I'd be there washing the dishes, and then I'd finish that shift, and then I'd be one of them. Looking back on it, it's pretty interesting.
That. Yeah. Do you because that drive's still there now.
100%.
What caused it?
I think I was always taught early on that hard work pays. Yeah. My dad did multiple jobs. My dad was a teacher.
Yeah.
But he used to teach. Used to do evening jobs in the prison, teaching prison guards about how they could get skills and crafts and help them be educated to come out of prison. My mum worked a couple of jobs, and he always used to make us work as well. So my friends got to a point where they would never come around to my house because they knew if they came around they'd have to do jobs. My dad would make them do jobs, and so every Saturday morning for about 4 hours I would have to chop the logs or mow the lawn.
Dad, I've got no mates.
Yeah, literally my mates were just I'm not coming around anymore because...
But at least if you had no mates, you could then do more jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you ever find that you think about this next generation? Because there's this whole thing about the next generation are lazy, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't think is true. They're just different.
Yeah.
Do you ever fall foul of that because you worked so hard at the start of your career? Do you ever catch yourself being nah, you could be doing more?
Yeah, so I think there's two things. I think so. My first jobs, often I would work, when I worked in banks and consultants, it was regular you'd work till 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And I kind of feel like it's a rite of passage. And I have to pull myself back from that because, well, if I did it, why shouldn't they do it?
Yeah.
And then there's also the other thing, I think, which is more for my kids. I've got 3 kids. And it's my parents, never gave me a car when I was 17, or they never bought me. My first car was a £250 Ford Fiesta that had a hole in the bottom and went faster in third than it did in fourth. And I was like, well, if I had to go through that, why shouldn't they? But then the flip side of that is, I'm fortunate now that probably I could afford to buy my kids a car.
Yeah.
So why would I make them not benefit from what I have? And I don't have an answer for it, but it's a battle that goes. I always think.
Yeah, I'm sure. My first car was a Fiat Punto that was 120 quid. It was 120 because it had 2 months tax. It was going to be 100.
You're probably older than me. It probably was about the same price.
And it revved itself when it was in neutral. So I'd pull up in traffic and it'd rev between 1,000 and 3,000 revs. And people thought I wanted to race them. I was in this 5-door white thing. So you go to Camp America and others, Mexico, everything else, right? Best thing you can possibly do in my
awesome.
mind.
Yeah.
Then what?
So I went to university.
So you've got a place?
I had a place that I deferred to take the year off.
Nice.
And the university I went to doesn't exist now. It's called UMIS, which is in Manchester, part of the University of Manchester. and it was a very business orientated university. The reason I went there was more to do with the fact that Man United was there, and I could be in a city like Manchester. But it was a good university.
Yeah.
But I was the only one out of all my friends that went to university, so none of my friends went to university. But when I got there, I guess you're surrounded by people who are a bit more ambitious, probably put a bit more thoughts into their career.
Yeah.
And I think that probably, I guess, fed onto me in terms of starting to fuel and drive and help me imagine what you can do kind of post-university.
So what did you go there to study?
I did what was called management sciences, so it was like generic business studies, marketing, economics.
A bit of a catch-all till you worked out what you wanted to do.
Total catch-all, yeah.
Okay. Throughout uni, did you ever get to the point where you were like, I think I know what I want to do for a career now?
Never. I had zero.
The uni thing's amazing, isn't it? Like people just go heap on all this debt, and then they're like, "Oh God, now what?"
So I'm definitely older than you. I was the last year to not have to pay for university, so I got the tuition free.
Oh wow. Okay.
But my parents helped me with spending money. But I worked 2-3 jobs all the way through university. I actually I came out of university with zero debt. I paid myself through university.
Amazing.
But yeah, never once throughout university did I have a clue. And even the jobs that I applied for ranging from like consulting jobs, accounting jobs, banking jobs, corporate jobs. I just kind of looked on the shelf of who has graduate jobs.
Was there anyone to help you?
I mean, there's probably someone with a title of a career advisor. But,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you ever went to one. They zero value.
Yeah, it's the same as I felt about my business studies teacher. I was like, if you were any good at business, you wouldn't be here, mate.
Yeah.
So you don't know what you're going to do. You finish uni. If you then consider from there what you've ended up achieving, and I am proud of people that I care about, so I'm going to big you up. Right? You've achieved some incredible things, and like hearing all this stuff makes it really obvious that you did actually. Like hearing all those jobs and hearing those like astute decisions. I know it's weird to take compliments, but I'm going to carry on.
Okay.
It's really obvious that you've ended up doing as well as you've done and having the reputation you've got. But how did we get from I'm finishing uni, I'm doing a couple of jobs to keep ends meeting, and I don't know what I want to do, to here?
A lot of luck, I think. Circumstances, opportunities. So my career path went from so pretty much the only job I got offered was a job at the Royal Bank of Scotland. So I took a graduate program there.
In London?
In London.
Cool.
And it was like one of those graduate programs that do a few rotations. And I started off, it was like a back office rotation. There was a trading rotation. Anyway, the first 6 months I didn't like. And my best mate from university decided that he didn't like his job and he quit his job. And he was like, Jeff, let's go to Magala for a week. It wasn't Magala. Where was it? It was another one of those touristy places. He's like, why don't you resign and then we can go on holiday for a week? And I literally handed in my notice to have a week on holiday with him.
Amazing.
And then I took a job at JP Morgan. I got a job at JP Morgan, doing like middle office. I started to qualify as a management accountant. Got bored of that. It was like repetitive and dull.
Yeah.
Moved into consulting with Accenture.
You have done the rounds.
So I did the rounds. Yeah, did all the corporates. Big corporates. Did that for about 3 years.
Did that suit you because it was a grind? Because you go into Accenture and they say, right, here you go, here's a workload, get on with it. Did you find a comfort in that because you'd always worked so hard?
I don't think that was what I liked Accenture because I got to travel a lot. So I got to go. I was on the road the whole time doing multiple kind of consulting in multiple European countries, and I like the variety of consulting. But the reason I left consulting was you got zero ownership, and that's what, if I look back now on what I love about what I do now, and why I moved into smaller companies with different roles. I think what drives me is having an impact. As I've got older, and I didn't realise it at the time, I don't mind failing, but I will always regret not putting myself in a position where I can have an impact. And I think in a big company like Accenture or a bank, or when you're consulting, you're either just a name or a cog in the wheel, or you're in and then you're out, and you're not actually driving things.
So there's a leap, right? Because I should imagine loads of people feel this in their early mid-20s. They're like, I'm a cog in the wheel, my salary's fine, I'm sort of trapped because my salary's pretty good, I get a bit of travel. How'd you go from there to having a bit of ownership and making some decisions and having your head on the block a little bit? Because I think that's an exciting thing too, right?
Totally. So I think when I was doing this, I was getting some international experience as well. So when I was at JP, I managed to do a year in the US, which was awesome, working in New York. And then actually when I was at Accenture, I moved to Australia. So I had a girlfriend at the time. She'd lived in Australia. She wanted to go back to Australia. So I got a transfer with Accenture. And then we broke up and I'd already signed my contract. So I was like, well, I should go. So I got to Australia, hated it for the first year. And then tried to get jobs back in the UK, came back for a holiday and literally the plane door opened and it was like -2 degrees in Heathrow or whatever. And I was like, get back to Australia.
Yeah.
And then in the role there, I think I started to get, that was probably mid-20s, late 20s. And I was starting to get some, I think to your point, responsibility.
Yeah.
And actually, without really knowing it, the more responsibility you got, I think I started to get more enjoyment and more satisfaction out of what you're doing, more accountability. And that was when I probably had the first leap into the importance of relationships and networks and stuff like that. And I hate the term networks, but all my career since then has really been driven through relationships. Like I haven't had an interview or like it's meet a person, they like you, get to know them. Here's this opportunity.
Did you ever think like, I know what my life's going to be in those like mid-20 stages? Did you think, right, I am going to be in consulting for this long? Did it ever, because personally, I didn't. I was never like, oh, I'm going to be in this industry forever. Did it ever dawn on you? Because I think a lot of people in their sort of mid-20s, as we're getting to now, would probably be like, that's me. I'm a management consultant. I'm going to be forever.
I think if I'm brutally honest with myself, my motivation was more money. Like
Game on. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Like when I was at university, and I was touched on earlier, the one like inflection point I remember being at university, and until then, my whole life, my career ambition had been to earn the salary of my age. So by 25, if I could earn 25,000, by 30, if I could earn 30,000, by 35, if I could earn 35,000. And I met this girl at university who told me that her dad earned £100,000. And I remember calling her a liar. I was like, no, he doesn't. Like, there's no way anyone earns £100,000. No one earns £100,000.
Yeah.
And so I think that was almost like the thing of I want a job. And the reason I went into consulting and banking was I thought, the easiest way to make money. Yeah. And it was only when later on you start to think about actually what is it that makes you happy, that the money priority kind of.
There's
declines.
An inflection, right? You get to the point where you're comfortable. Where did payments come in? Because there was accounting early, which so there's a numbers thing. I get that. Accounting, business, but when did payments start?
So I left Accenture because I didn't want to do consulting because I didn't like that ownership. Like you're in and out. You don't get ownership basically.
Yeah, fine.
And I joined, but I like the variety of consulting, like the concept of going in and helping people. I liked. So I joined an Australian investment bank called Macquarie, which is like a mini Goldman Sachs, to do consulting internally for them. So I basically went through their business units and helped them with certain problems. One of the businesses I did that for asked me to go permanent. I ended up basically doing mergers and acquisitions for Macquarie in their retail financial services business, of which part of what they looked at was payments. So we ended up investing in a business which is now called OFX, which is a payments business.
Yeah.
I was on the Macquarie side, kind of helping manage that from kind of a portfolio perspective. And the management team of the OFX business was a lot of Macquarie people that had basically been injected when they invested in the business.
Okay. And
the CEO of OFX I became friends with, and he said, why don't you come across?
Game on.
Yeah. So I went across there as a chief operating officer. And that was back in 2013. And then I've been in payments ever since.
So the COO role suits you at that time. You could do it now, right? But at that time, it suits you.
Loved it. It was amazing. I was like 32.
Business card.
I was 32 years of age, never been in payments. Someone said, come and be on the C-suite of a business which...
So talk to me about some numbers. How big was that business?
It was... it listed 6 months later, 9 months later, 300 people, $40-50 million Aussie dollars of revenue or something like that. It listed for about half a billion.
32?
Half $1 billion or something like that.
That's epic.
And it was just like, it was just like, in hindsight, it was a leap in terms of seniority.
Yeah.
But given the size of the business and, it wasn't necessarily hugely different. It opened my eyes in terms of it's still common sense, regardless of the seniority of the role and how big the teams are, etc. Yeah. A lot of it is just common sense and managing people,
One of the things I've always said is that there's no ceremony even as things get bigger. Yeah. You know when you thought when you bought your first house, that they'd be like, and here we have, but the estate agent's like, here's your keys, go away, I've got my commission. And nothing changes as you get, as things grow. But you must have had a moment at that role where you were like, here we are? Because if you think back to that, oh, I know someone, my dad earns 100 grand. Your whole horizon has just opened a ton by going into that role, surely.
Looking back on it, yes.
Yeah.
At the time, no.
You're in the mix.
At the time, you're just in the mix. It's just like, this is another great opportunity, and I love that job. Like, I was working with a bunch of people who I'm still friends with now.
Amazing.
We were growing a business that was growing quite quickly. It was super exciting. It was FinTech before FinTech was even FinTech.
Yeah.
It was super exciting, and that was the moment that I knew that where I got my energy and what I loved about work was about building teams, working with people, solving simple problems, and my superpower was around getting the clever people into a room to solve the problems. It wasn't necessarily me that was able to solve the problems, but I was good at bringing the right people in and helping them to do the hard work.
It's an amazing skill. Do you ever feel like when you identified what your superpower was, you've been burdened by it? And I'll tell you why I asked that question, because it's one for me. People will say things about me, and they're like, oh, you're great at that. And then I'm like, shit, well, I've got to be really great at that. And it's something that just came naturally to me. Do you know what I mean? Like this whole networking, that sort of thing. I haven't tried to do that, but now they're like, that's the thing we need you to do, and you're in a box, don't worry about anything else. Did you ever feel a pressure because you identified it was your superpower?
That's a good point. Have I have a big imposter syndrome generally, so I wouldn't say every day, but very regularly I'm like, I shouldn't really speak. What am I doing here? Yeah, like how am I? A bit like how did I get here? When am I going to get found out?
Yeah.
And you realise that in certain circumstances you've got energy and you feel really comfortable. In certain areas you don't. But I think you're right. If I reflect on it, it's when people say we need to get Jeff in because he's good at this or something like that. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah,
it's a bit harder.
Yeah. We so our CTO is Pete, my co-founder as well, and he's the most technically gifted person I have ever encountered. He's remarkable. He's still absolutely petrified of doing demos. It works every single time the technology works.
Because that's his credibility. That's his name on that. It's his name on the top of the door. Yeah.
And he's like, I've been up at night thinking about this demo. I was like, our customers do that thousands of times a day. Don't worry about it. It works. But I think there's that, like having that nervousness means it keeps you honest.
I did a workshop last week, and the person running the workshop gave this amazing kind of quote. We were talking about leadership and how do you define leadership.
Yep.
And she said leadership is just ordinary people that have an extraordinary commitment to something.
Ooh.
So leadership, great leaders. Leadership is just about ordinary people that have an extraordinary commitment to something, and that's a great example. Yeah, that's like your CTO is a great leader because he cares. He's got that commitment.
Yes.
To it, like none of us are special.
No.
We just have a desire and a hunger to go and do something.
So you do your Macquarie stint, all goes well, high on life. There's got to be a dip after that because it was so good. Where was it?
It's almost like you've read the script. So the dip was I joined OFX, loved it. We listed it. It was all going well. Yeah. The CEO, a guy called Neil Helm, still I would say is one of my kind of mentors. You have like 3 or 4 people in your career which you kind of look onto. He's still one of those people. He retired, stepped down, and we all thought that there should have been an internal kind of CEO promotion. Not me, but one of the other guys. Yeah. And he wasn't given it, and we brought in an external candidate, and it just changed the dynamic of the business and the team, like literally overnight. And within 12 months, we'd all left. All the leadership team had left. So we all thought we were going to be there forever. And you're right, just that one thing. And it wasn't necessarily that the new guy was bad or wasn't very nice. It just changed what we all held was the right kind of belief in terms of the way forward. So that was like the first dip or bubble being burst, I guess, in terms of I'm going to have to go and find another journey.
When you're looking for what you do after that, are you trying to find what you had at Macquarie in that new role when you're in interviews or when you're speaking to people? I
was 100% trying to find what I had at FX and in the payment space. Like I loved... FinTech was starting to kind of get a buzz around.
So Australia, 2015?
It would have been 2016,
cool.
I think. FinTech started to get a bit of buzz. Payments obviously starting to get activity. And I'd made some contacts just through, being through the circle. So I ended up going to a business called World First, which is another payments business, similar in many respects to OFX. And the founder there was a legendary guy as well, a guy called Jonathan Quinn, founder and CEO of that business, another massively influential person for me. And And so he offered me the role. I was in Australia. He offered me to move to Hong Kong and basically lead the Asian business of World First. And that was another kind of awesome journey as well.
So context on World First, how big, how many people, what's the split?
I think about 500 or 600 people when I joined. Probably like £50 million in revenue, quite global people, UK headquartered, but staff in 7 or 8 different countries. And what they did, which was really awesome, and it's quite common now per se. So they were, we think they were the first business to kind of commercialize what are now called virtual bank accounts.
Okay.
So you could sign up with World First, and they would give you a virtual bank account in US dollars or sterling or euros that you could open immediately as a small business or consumer, and you could use those funds to collect money overseas. And so they actually opened up the Chinese market for Amazon. So we were able to onboard a Chinese small business that wanted to sell on Amazon in the US. We would give them a US dollar bank account that they could collect US dollars from Amazon, and then we would convert it into and send it to China. And before World First gave them this product, Amazon couldn't onboard anyone from China because they couldn't pay them. So we obviously pretty big breakthrough in terms of market. We became pretty popular with Amazon, and that business was growing like a weed, and the whole business was based in the UK. And so I was like the first exec to go into Asia and help that business.
Oh wow! Who had the idea
for that
specific bit?
So Jonathan, I think, had the first idea, but there was a guy called Nick Aston who had lived in China and I think seen the opportunity, and I think between the two of them they kind of made the connection.
Did you know that idea was there before you joined?
Yeah, it was already the idea. It was already there, live, growing.
Oh, it was
already there. It was basically they needed someone in region to help support it because the opportunity was so big. So it's a common feature in my career that I'm not the ideas guy. I don't come up with any ideas. I just help people, I guess, execute on them.
Yeah, nice. So I know what happened to World First, but I'd love to know more about it, because where World First ended up and what ended up happening has to be a fascinating story. Yeah, maybe it isn't. It was just really simple. It was just like, done. But
look, I think it's, at least at the time, I think it was a poster boy story of what a lot of entrepreneurs in the fintech space aspire to. And so, it was a business that was bootstrapped by the founder, Jonathan, and his co-partner, Nick Robinson, in a basement in South London. They grew that business. They found this opportunity. It was growing. It was a great business anyway, but they found this Amazon opportunity, and it accelerated the growth. It attracted the interest of a number of businesses, but namely Amazon and a business called Ant Financial, it was called the Ant Group. They're the parent company of Alipay, the Chinese super app. And long story short, that the business got acquired 100% by the Ant Group back in 2019 for north of £500 million. And so it was a pretty good kind of exit of which everyone wanted to. That was what I mean.
How involved in the process were you?
Very. So I joined as head of Asia, then became chief commercial officer.
Yep.
Then I became group managing director, which effectively meant I had the whole company reporting into me, and then I reported into Jonathan.
I bet then you're looking at your business card like, come on.
And I worked very closely with Jonathan, obviously, in terms of we initially were looking for investment. We went through a round to raise some money because we were bootstrapped, and it was at the time when a lot of other people were starting to get real venture funding or private equity funding, and we couldn't really compete with some of that investment, just through our own funding. Anyway, as we went through that process, it became quite apparent that there was a couple of people that were interested in 100% acquisitions. So I was kind of close with Jonathan all the way through, and then the deal completed, and then just after the deal completed, I was then asked to take on the CEO role.
Amazing.
It was cool. Yeah, it's good.
So I get that. So the parallel I can try to draw here is Macquarie to OFX.
Yep.
The change after the acquisition, like how different was it? Did it lose any of its spark or its excitement because you were part of Ant? There's obviously challenges when you get acquired by a big company, right? And you're then responsible for it all.
Yeah, you're 100% right. So you go from being a high growth kind of private business, which is super exciting because you're in control of your own destiny. But also facing increasing competition. Payments is becoming more popular. International money transfer is becoming more popular. You got Wise and Revolut starting to enter the market with loads and loads of funding. To then get acquired by the biggest fintech in the world. I mean, if people don't know the story, Ant was a 24 hours away from listing for a north of $300 billion valuation. And when we were acquired, we knew that the size and the scale of what they did. Alipay's got 1 billion daily users. So it's super exciting to be kind of acquired by a business that's got that scale and that growth. I think we were also like really excited to just learn like what did they do, and especially the fact that the Chinese angle. I think to work for a company in China is so hidden in terms of how they operate, what it is that makes them special. So to kind of be on the inside, I was traveling to Hangzhou and Shanghai every week and kind of meeting the culture. But that came with the pressure of growth. They spent all that money. They want you to grow very, very quickly. The cultural differences in terms of how you approach problems and deal with things. And then just like communication challenges. And it was only 6 months after the acquisition, 9 months after the acquisition that COVID hit. So I went from going every week to them and building really good relationships to not being able to travel and being away for 2 years. And I think that time and tyranny of kind of distance made it a lot harder, but amazing experience.
I'm sure. What would you say is the thing you got most right and the thing you got most wrong post-acquisition? And feel free to celebrate yourself as always.
No, I think what did we get most right and most right? We took the view, because of the differences in cultures, countries, the businesses themselves, around what level of integration we should do. Mm-hmm. I think we got it wrong because we ended up kind of convincing ourselves we weren't going to leave it completely independent. We were going to try and leverage a lot of the Ant assets and integrate some technology platform, but we weren't going to fully integrate it. And I think we ended up in this like halfway house where we weren't one or the other. Yeah. And that led to just indecisiveness, not being clear in terms of who was making the decisions, who was making the investment. I think that was an issue. I think that halted our growth. I think from my side, I wasn't strong enough, partly because of inexperience, partly because of not having the technical knowledge, but we made a decision to integrate fully into the Ant platform. And I think we probably should have kept it separate because that would have enabled us to be more nimble and
Would you have had the choice
quicker.
to do that?
I think I could have fought harder.
Fine.
Whether I'd have had the choice or not, but I think we could have fought harder. In hindsight, now 3 years on, I've left, or 5 years on, I've left. The business is doing amazingly well. Like they're getting all the benefits and the synergies that they expected. Yeah. But I think they got them 2 or 3 years later than they expected.
What was the thing you did best?
I think I saw my primary role and responsibility, and hopefully did a reasonable job at it, was almost being the bridge between the two cultures. Yeah. And cultures both in terms of Western China, but also cultures in terms of expectations and demand management. So, to give you an example, we would go into annual budget processes. I'm sure you like them.
Love them.
Answer was if it wasn't 3 digits, it wasn't worth coming to the table. Why would we buy it? Yeah. So and for us as a business to suddenly be almost forced to have 100% growth targets put on you was pressure, and it was culturally just different to what we'd been used to. Yeah. The rationale behind it was actually super insightful, and actually something that I take with me to this day now, which is if you target yourself that high and you aim for the stars, if you fail, you might still hit the moon. Yeah. Yeah. If you aim too low and you achieve that, that's great, but you might not have. So by aiming at 100, if you achieve 60, that's awesome. If you aim for 20, you're going to hit 20. Yep. So there's a lot of things that I learned from that process. But I think back to your question, I think I was more resilient and able and more mature and probably more experienced to be able to deal with some of those changes. Yeah. A lot of the more junior people or people that hadn't been exposed were less. And I think what I was able to do to some degree was maintain the culture and the team spirit and the togetherness of the world first business while kind of trying to manage that juxtaposition, all that that difference.
What an amazing test!
Oh mate, and I've been super lucky. Like I've now worked for a UK fintech, an Aussie fintech, a Chinese fintech, a US fintech which comes afterwards, and my latest role has very strong ties to Brazil. So like effectively and Africa. So I've been very fortunate to have got exposure across like all those different continents.
One of the things I find most difficult about what I do is that when I speak to my mum or my nan, they don't know. My mum still thinks I'm a project manager. Did you find that as time went on, you found it harder to speak to your family about what they're doing and just because you said about your family pulling together to try and send you to that school? Have you found it hard to impress on them the magnitude of what you're doing, or have you not felt the need to?
I definitely don't feel the need to impress it on them, but I think it's almost the flip side of they want to be proud of their kids, yeah.
Exactly.
So they want to find out about what you're doing, and explaining it is complex. Yeah, like it's difficult if you're not in the industry. My daughter was asked once what her daddy did, and she explained it as, my daddy goes on planes with suitcases of money. And the teacher thought that was
I love that.
but no, even to this day now, like my parents will see, I don't know, like PR or something with something in, and they don't, I think they find it surprising. Yeah, like it's a different world, and it's nice. I mean, it's nice to be able to.
I really hope they watch this and enjoy it.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
get to see you have a chance to reflect on what you've done. That would be nice.
And it is nice sometimes to sit back and reflect, and they're super proud of me, I'm sure.
Yeah, good. So, was there a time you had to stay at World First? Were you tied in for a certain period of time, or did you just decide to move when the time was right?
I was tied in, but I wanted to stay. Like, I mean, I was massively excited about the opportunity.
Yeah.
The people were great that I worked with. I think over time, my view changed. So I think the first 18 months I was like all in, massively excited.
Despite COVID,
yeah. I mean, I say it was just like, I say, working for to me, and it's like an Amazon, it's like an Apple, it's like a Google. It's one of the top tech companies in the world. Yeah. And so I was very privileged to have that opportunity to kind of just be involved in that whole environment. The reality is, with my role, as World First became more and more integrated, and arguably more and more important to the Ant Group, the command or the control mechanisms within the business and the way that Ant is culturally meant that they wanted to put more and more of the control within HQ, let's call it, within China. And so my role and my ability to influence kind of declined, probably at a time when my needs and expectations were going the other way. So I had less control and wanted more. Yeah. And so over time, that I guess led to a split, which is ultimately why I left. I didn't think at the end I wasn't performing the role of a CEO and wasn't adding enough value to Ant as a CEO, and that someone else could do the role that they needed better than me.
You mentioned imposter syndrome earlier. One of the things that comes with imposter syndrome is a need to provide value to the person that's paying you.
100%.
Simple as that. Yeah. So it sounds like that was what. Did you start to feel, not imposter syndrome, but it was just you didn't feel like you were adding the value that you needed to value based on your special skill? Yeah,
I feel like I wasn't adding value to them, but I also felt like I wasn't getting the satisfaction that I wanted out of work as well. And I think you would know, having founded your own business, that you spend a lot of time at work. Yeah, like if you're not enjoying it day to day, not only are you not enjoying that part of your life, but it goes home with you as well. Yeah, like you're spending time with your friends and your family, and if you're not, I'm a bit like you. I'd say I describe myself as an extrovert, amazingly positive in mindset. Like everything is good. Yeah, life's amazing. Yeah,
and possible.
And possible. And if you ever see those values being clouded or diminished, it's kind of a signal that maybe you're doing the wrong thing.
I agree. A good buddy of mine's special forces, and him and I talk a lot about the term happy wins.
Yeah.
And that you've never seen someone, an athlete or a musician be really sad and then go out there and perform at their best.
100%. Yeah.
So everything I do is manufactured to make myself as happy as humanly possible. And do you know what my chairman said to me once? A guy called Rob Barnett. He said, one of the things that's my responsibility is to make sure you're as happy as possible, because then this business will do well.
And I guess, without knowing you, as I say, amazingly well as well, that's your superpower, yeah?
Yeah.
Like, you're the most positive, happy person, and I'm sure your team think that as well.
Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah,
there's stuff that goes wrong, right? And I think if you do that, you get the chance to pick your moments.
Yeah.
And then if there is something bad, it's like, well, okay, this must actually be bad. But misery likes company. Yeah. I think in the size of business that we are, if there was any negativity, it would spread really quickly, because you can easily find things to complain about, right?
And you're right. I think our role as leaders, that's almost what 50% of the job becomes at some point. Yeah, is providing that vision and that optimism and that space to think about the future in the good times and the bad times. Yeah. I
remember a company I was at, I had to say to somebody, please don't speak to new joiners for 2 weeks. Because she was so negative. She was brilliant at her job, but she was so negative that I said to her, look, of the 100 people we've got here, if every time somebody new joins, you're negative, we'll end up having 200 negative people. Yeah. We need this fresh energy to change the stuff that's a problem. Yeah, so the Ant journey finishes. No massive rush to decide what was next, I can assume.
Interesting. So a lot of people ask me this question, and maybe this is to do with the imposter syndrome. Yep. In theory, no real rush.
Yeah.
but I created a rush on my side because well, I might never be wanted again. Like no one want. I might be on the scrap heap. I might be on the scrap heap forever if I don't get a job quickly.
That's a healthy stress.
Yeah, it's a healthy stress. Yeah. So I actually had a role before I left. Like I knew there was a role available before I actually left World First. Like I would have felt too insecure, I think, to not do that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately enough, I joined an amazing business called Marqeta, which was my first foray into, I guess, cards. I'd always done like bank account to bank account kind of stuff. And again, I learned a lot. I was only there 12 months due to certain circumstances, which I'm sure we'll go into. But yeah, it was amazing business, and I loved my time there as well.
So in really, really simple terms, what does Marqeta do? Just so I can understand it.
They are an issuer processor, which means that the card that you have in your wallet, debit card, credit card, etc. When you tap that and it gets accepted in the merchant, behind the scenes there's a whole bunch of stuff happening. But my business is basically is taking a bunch of information and deciding whether to accept or decline that transaction.
Fine.
Or approve it or not. So it's making sure is it really Liam who's spending that, and do I authorise the payment? So
I think I saw you maybe in Vegas at Money 2020 when you just started it.
Sometimes job's hard.
Marqeta, yeah. Do you remember at that? Yeah. I everybody had their first couple of drinks, then I went home to write notes.
Yeah.
Geez, I'll get a life one day. But so you were fairly new into Marqeta then, right? So how did it all play out? What was the?
I joined, and this is another example of relationship. So the OFX job I got, I say, through someone I knew from Macquarie. I met Jonathan, kind of got the job at World First. I had a guy that worked for me at World First who moved to Marqeta 2 years ago, and when they were looking for someone to head up their international business, so everything outside of the US.
Mm-hmm.
He basically put my name forward, and they called me up.
Boom.
That's kind of that's how it went.
So then what happened?
So I was with them for a year. So I loved it. Like, it was good business. I think just circumstances. I was approached like a year later by a competitor, Paymentology, where I am now.
Yeah.
They'd had some certain circumstances where the kind of founder and CEO needed to change his role.
Yeah.
And so they were looking for someone to replace him. And they asked me whether I was interested. And so I wasn't looking to go, but I knew in my heart of hearts, I knew the one thing I knew at Marqeta very quickly is that I'd convinced myself I didn't need to be a CEO again. When I joined Marqeta, I was like, I don't need to be a CEO as long as the role is rewarding.
Yeah.
I knew within 3 or 4 months that actually I'd kind of deceived myself a bit, and that at some point in the future I wanted to be CEO again.
What did you miss the most?
I think that ability to have an impact and make decisions, and so I don't mind failing, but I'd like to fail on my terms and know that it's me that wasn't good. I don't mind. My ambition in life is to reach my potential, whatever that potential is. I don't care whether my potential is here, or here. Yeah. But if you reach your potential, I think you can say that you've given life a shot. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, being a CEO enables you to reach that potential more effectively. And at Marqeta, I wasn't on the C-suite. I was never going to be on the C-suite because I wasn't in the US, and I didn't feel I had that ability to impact. And so that was kind of the deciding point.
The biggest question that always comes to my mind with you is, why have you not started your own thing from scratch?
Probably two or three things. One is there's that imposter syndrome. Like, I wouldn't be successful. Like, I don't have the innate belief that I could do it. Yeah. Like, fundamentally.
Fine.
And two, I speak to so many other people that I just feel are so much more creative with ideas. Like, obviously yourself, we've got a joint friend, Danny, who started his business, Stored. I hear those people talk, and I'm just like, you just get stuff better than I do, and so I just don't think I did. Now, will that change in the future? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. But at this
I hope so. Ring me if it does. We'll have a go. So talk to me about Paymentology. What is Paymentology? How big is Paymentology?
So Paymentology, similar business in terms of type of business to Marqeta. So we're an issuer processor. Mm-hmm. We are very global in nature. I'd say we are the most global of our type of business. We've got clients in over 50 countries. We have staff in over 50 countries.
Wow.
Our big selling proposition, I guess, is that one is that we're that global footprint. It's really hard to do this stuff in more than one country. Yeah. And the fact that we're already there in 50 countries is a massive boon and competitive advantage. We're a technology business. We're cloud native, so everything is in the cloud. It's very configurable and easy to use. Our clients are FinTechs or neobanks, corporates that want to go into embedded finance. So we would have Grab, Agoda, some really good Jeeves. We do the NatWest metal products. So some great brands all the way around the world. And I think that global footprint just sets us up so well for success. I think there's going to be a massive digitalization is on the trend. Card and wallet payments are increasing. So there's big kind of macro tailwinds. I think the global footprint gives us a massive opportunity to penetrate further. And the team is just, it's just a great team. So I'm super excited, and hopefully I'm here for a while.
Lovely. How many people in the team?
500.
Jeepers.
So,
check that out.
Yeah, it's spread. We're a bit too diverse, and we're in too many countries in some ways, because it's hard to get. When you've got staff in 50 countries, it makes things challenging. Sure. But it does mean that we can serve our clients locally, do 24/7 service. So I'm super excited.
Love it. Final thing is a payments prediction. So where macro might go within something niche, within something huge, within how we pay in 10 years' time. I don't care, but something about what Jeff thinks that payments is going to do in the next couple of years.
Look, I think two things spring to mind. One, I'm jumping on no one will be surprised. I think AI is going to transform various parts of what we do, whether it's how we manage risk, how we manage customer support, how we present products to customers. I think it's got huge amounts of use cases, and we're only just at the start. Yeah. I think the second piece, which is very specific to my business, and I think is going to have a massive impact, is we'll see the transformation of credit cards. I think credit cards haven't changed for 40 years. I think there's a massive opportunity to do individual, personalised, tailored credit cards that have got loyalty and rewards that are to suit you as an individual. So I'll understand you as a customer, maybe using AI, and I will present you with much more useful activities and rewards and engagement, which is massively important for brands, because all a brand wants to do is engage their customer and increase loyalty. And I think cards can be a big component of that.
I like that. I haven't even considered it, but now I want it. Mate, thanks very much. That was,
thank you.
Class.
And that concludes another episode of Not What I Expected. I hope you loved that as much as I loved recording it. If you like it, let us know. If you don't, tell us how you think it could be better. Thanks, and see you again.